Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Automated Advantage. Today we have Elisabeth on. So, Elizabeth, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, hi. Hey, thanks for having me, Greg, first of all. Elizabeth Bykoff. I do have a last name, French. Don't hold that against me, I guess. I'm founder and CEO of Boxy.io, Boxsy.io, and we're building the first AI chief operating officer or operational sidekick for startups and entrepreneurs. So, really, the idea is to really help you focus on building and selling your product and all the crap I call it you don't want to do or you don't know how to do or you know how to scale operations for a company. We really want to be that platform to really help you do that and increase your chance of success.
Well, that's interesting. And so maybe tell us the origins of that. You were sitting around the kitchen table and had this great idea, or you got this background that says, "Look, I think that there's
Yeah.
a different way to do it."
Yeah, I come from a consulting background. After my aerospace engineering, I converted to business. So 10 years at PwC in the consulting side, I actually sold the first US Salesforce.com project back in 2009. And that gave me my first taste of entrepreneurship, I call it, right, within the safety of a very big firm. So in 2017, after I was about to sign my life away and be a partner, I said no, I quit, and then I went into pre-IPO world. Right, I was in the Bay Area, so the last 9 years have been working with product companies, B2B SaaS companies, from late stage all the way to pre-product, pre-revenue. I've been an angel investor. I've been an advisor formally and informally for startups. And at the end of 22, when ChatGPT came out, I thought if I had one more founder asking me how to build a B2B sales process in Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever, I'm shooting myself in the head. Literally, I was just like, hey, it's not I don't want to help, but I'm like, I thought the tech finally arrived to be able to take all this knowledge, right, that all of us had and helping founders and just literally give that to founders at their fingertips, right? So you don't have to waste time or, taking the guesswork out of operations. So the idea of Boxy really came from that, ops in a box, right? Some of the founders I talked to called it startup for dummies, the yellow book, a tech version of the yellow book, right? On how to do that. And then obviously since then, it took me time to validate the idea. And then AI went so quickly from just an LLM to then agents to MCP to you name it, whatever is next. And so the idea really evolved with some pivots along the way, and I'm sure we'll have more. But that's really what
Yeah.
happened.
So there you go. I mean, yeah, that leveraging that consulting background, it's kind of interesting. You talk about the Salesforce, HubSpot, that's similar background. I also did the Accenture and IBM thing, so we got the good rounding out there. And so you talked about it. So how, I mean, the company formation, is it you, investors? How are you organized right now? What's the structure?
Yeah, we're a C corp since day one. Transparently, I think at the beginning, you're being an operator for so long, you're like, I'm my founder material, right? So I did took my time, even though I incorporated at the end of 23. It's not like I went 2 feet in, dropped everything, and say I'm going to be a founder now. I was way more conservative, I'm going to call it, at the beginning, and just still doing things on the side, being in the middle of my ICP and the customers, I wanted to acquire, to be fair, and started slowly, defining what an MVP could look like and playing around with having better, design partners and all those things. And so but we're a C corp. I have some investors, friends and family, mainly bootstrap right now, and yeah, just trying to really get out there and we have our first paying customers, yay. But now it's like, hey, how do you scale that? How do you put your name out there and sharing what we're doing? Obviously getting traction is the most important thing, so that's really where we're at.
Well, that's actually was a good segue. I was going to ask you that. So, what's the mechanism for getting people to see you, find you, understand that you got a couple of paying customers? That's fantastic. How are
um,
you looking for the next set of paying customers?
yeah, so interestingly, it's been challenging. I mean, I think we're all in this world of AI where everybody's like, you got to do outreach, and then we all are getting bombarded with hundreds of emails for different outreach, and we're like, delete, 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 delete. I've been really trying to build on different channel, if that makes sense. Heavy on just social media, so you gotta have to build that presence. Having to even force myself to be like 30-day challenge. I'm gonna post every day. So really trying to do that, being visible and putting the word out there, but that's not always sufficient. So we've been also going through a channel of distribution. For us, it's talking to startup communities or accelerators and trying to, what I say, acquire startup founders in bulk, if that makes sense, right? Working with those accelerators to provide the tool as well as potential services that goes with them, right? If that helps. We've been also looking at those software marketplaces. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with AppSumo or Nacho, that are kind of like great way to at least put yourself out there. Not great from a dollar amount, right? Because you have to give significant discount, but at least, just to build that awareness for people to know it's not forever anyway, but at least doing that. Affiliate programs is another way. And then we do intend to do two things a bit different is that we believe our founders are our best ambassador. I do believe that if I'm doing a good job for them and helping them, I want them to, if they can and willing to carry the torch. So we've been doing, we're looking at doing a referral program where any founder on Boxy can just refer, special code. You go, the more founders that come in, you get, Boxy for free, pretty, like heavily discounted and all that. So use that network effect and that referral. And that's number one. And then two, we're opening an equity crowdfunding round to be able to say, hey, founders, like, just, you can invest as a minimum of $100 in the company because we're building for you anyway. So if we're successful and you're one of our customers, like, we want you to also get the upside. So we're trying to be a bit creative and scrappy here on building that community of supporters and ambassadors to really carry the torch out there.
Yeah, and I think the word scrappy is the key to this starting your business, right? It's like, and maybe explain to some people in that context of how you spend your day, and you're testing out a lot of things, which is exactly what they tell you to do: test, optimize, change. So maybe from the context of setting up this business and your experience and the understanding of just like, what does scrappy mean, like in the day-to-day life of what you're doing.
Yeah. I think it has different meanings. And then I think you just realize, you think, you were mentioning the consulting, like, oh, this is a great foundation. Yeah, it's a great foundation until you're a founder and you're like, oh, this is all great, but you know, it gives you a structure, but it doesn't give you the execution of it, if that makes sense. And so that scrappiness, at least for me, has come from the fact of having to, in some cases, extend the run rate transparently, like any bootstrap slash, friends and family kind of founder is. So day to day, it's, I wear, it's me, a couple, obviously the engineering team, which is about, 2, 3 people, and then a bit of help from a social media, perspective, part-time in the Philippines. And so everything else is on me. So the scrappiness has been, how do you manage your time to do fundraising or get ready to get some funds into the company, whether it's grants application or pitch competition application or even the equity crowdfunding. So getting ready for that. Then you kind of switch gears. It's like BD. I need to go and make sure that I'm posting on LinkedIn and I'm doing demand gen and all that stuff, right? And so it's a lot of context switching, to be very honest. And it's a lot of Claude and a lot of Chat GPT help. Like, this is my best employee right now. And so, it's how do you leverage those tools? $20 a month, $17 a month, if you're doing Claude, and just really helping you multiply by 5 or 10 the amount of things you can do during the day, while sometimes just taking a step back and building automation to help you do that. And I do that for two reasons. One, it helps me, right? So do way more in 24 hours or less, right? But two, I'm testing a lot of things to be able to put that into Boxy, to be fair, right? It's almost like a double, double benefit. It's like, hey, I do it for myself, for Boxy itself, and if it works, I can then put that into the platform and share that with more founders to say, hey, this is really working. Here is a system that works. So that's really what I've been doing the last
Yeah,
few
and
months.
the thing that comes to mind for me is what you do recognize, and more so when I was a leader of a team and stuff like that. Everybody does a good job, but what you realize now is when you're doing a lot of it yourself, how much the supporting team did for you when you had the marketing and the business development and the whatever it was. There's a lot that goes into getting these things going and off the ground.
Yeah, and I think that's where people forget about it. Even as a founder, I think you see those founders that tell you like their success story and how long it took, and their ARR going up and all that. But when you start really digging into under the hood, right, in some cases they had to take a step back to set up a lot of things, to your point, trying out, or now with AI, like setting up certain systems. And it doesn't take 30 minutes sometimes to set up some of those systems, right? You're kind of really half a day, several days, right? And so I think that's what people also forget. It's like, yeah, you can get to that repeatable, scalable system, but you still need to set it up first and know how to set it up and spend the time to do that. And I think that's where, as founders, we sometimes like try to get shortcuts, and they don't exist, unfortunately. So the scrappiness comes to that too. Sometimes it's about like knowing where you should invest time to have that repeatable system to try to test it, or it's going, versus the one where you're like, I'm just going to cut corners and just like, this doesn't have to be perfect. And, so that's also a bit a part of the scrappiness of being a
Yeah.
founder.
And I'm curious on your perspective too, because what I've found is, and I feel like I'm doing a decent job of it, is you can go down that rabbit hole really quickly. For example, you use your example of a CRM or whatever it is. Hey, CRM for big enterprise company is Salesforce is maybe the right answer, but for a little scrappy company is something different. And you start looking and fiddling and going, and then suddenly it's like, geez, there's 3 or 4 hours gone, and I
Exactly.
haven't done a whole lot. So what I've been able to do, and I'm curious on your perspective, is do my top threes, and if the activities don't fit into the top three, which is acquiring new clients, lead generation, or whatever the others are, you can get lost. And I feel like I've done a decent job of like balancing my life. And I'll make one more statement, and I'm getting your opinion on it. Is people are like, well, you can start your own business, you can work 3 hours a day and make $1,000 a month. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's how it works. I think you have to work 10 hours a day and make a whole lot less. And so trying to get that work life balance for me has been a challenge, in just not being sucked into busy work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all like to say we're busy. Um, because I mean, I think it just, and busy again, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm the first offender to be like, every morning I do my list, right? So I've had to actually be extremely, and sometimes I miss it, and when I miss it, I'm not having a good day, right? So I'm better off just being, these are the top 5 things I'm going to do today, right? And to your point, does it fit into helping fundraising, BD, or product, whatever your categories are, right? Like your top 3 priorities. Um, and so I used to have laundry lists, right? And the list will never end because you cross and then you add and you add. And I had to stop doing that because then I would end the day like, I'm never done, right? Like, or I haven't done everything. I can keep working till midnight and then go to bed and then start all over again. And to your point of work life balance, then you just burn out. I mean, as a founder, I think of any type of business, it's our baby. We so want it to work that sometimes we're like, no, we'll postpone the time off. No, I have to be on this call, whatever it is, right? And I'm the first offender, so don't think I've, yeah, I haven't mastered that at all. I think you would ask me to disappear for 3 months right now. I'll be like, sure, let me go, let me disappear, like, but I can't do that, obviously. So I think it's really putting that structure and forcing yourself to be like, what are the top 3, 5 things I'm going to do today? And it's okay if the rest is tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to die. It's not a life and death situation. What really makes sense, and then really build that in. And you'll have days or weekends where you're making an exception, obviously, because you got to make progress maybe on some other things. But yeah, like putting as much structure as you can and forcing you to stay in it. I think that's been helpful, at least for me. And
Yeah,
for
and
you.
actually interesting you said that too, because I added one to my list this week. I do triathlons, and I was like, I've been falling off on my training, right? And I was like, I actually put that now in my top threes. It's like, and I did it this morning. I went out at 6:45. I rode my bike for an hour, and I was like, I couldn't feel better. And so folks, if you're doing this, I think it's really important that the work will always be there. I think if you pick your, again, we talked about the top three, and then add that into, you know, client follow up and things like just being true to your word. If you do all of those things, and the end of the day comes, and it's whatever the time is your end of day, put it down. It'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I will always be there tomorrow.
Yeah, so interesting. I've talked to a lot of ladies that have started their businesses and things like that, and I know we've evolved from I'm old man where we've evolved from the days when I started doing work and stuff like that. Have you seen a shift in being an entrepreneur, being a lady entrepreneur, and any perspectives on that over the last several years?
Yeah, I mean, some in some cases, I think you're seeing more women starting businesses. And in different areas. I think we sometimes are the majority or close to the majority of founders in healthcare or health tech, femtech, you name it, right? So some industries are a bit more prone for women founders. For some, just happens that way. I think it was the old adage of like, oh, marketing, way more women, or HR, way more. Now it's switched. Obviously, it's changed, but I think in some of the things, we might have some more passionate on certain areas, so solving certain problems. So I think you still see that, but I keep running into a lot of women founder here in Austin and all those places. So I think there's really a lot of women now that have allowed themselves to take the leap, which is great, and I think that's one of the changes. At the same time, we still run into the bias of there's still 1.8% of VC funding going to women, at least in the US, right? So it's very, very low. It was getting a bit better before COVID, and then after COVID, it kind of took a drop down. I think it's been trying to go back up. On a pure VC related funding, it's still hard. There is still some bias there, and so I think we're all trying to support each other. And there's a lot of great VCs that really focus on underrepresented founders and all that, but we haven't won the battle yet. And I think it's also a lifestyle. It's a difficult journey, and so you really want to be committed. You want to have the support system that you need to do that, with or without kids. You know what I mean. And I have a really good friend of mine that has 6 kids. And she's a female founder, and she's doing it. And her husband has a full-time job, but he's also part of the business. And so I think they're a very strong couple, and they have a very strong support system to do that. And she's doing it. And she's been not coached, but like some people are like, you should write a book about this, like, because it's amazing to me. She's amazing. I'm like, I barely can do it with 2 furry kids and 3 step kids, and she has like 6 kids. So I think that's the kind of story we don't always hear about when you talk about female founders, is that some of us are just not me, but like some of us are doing it with all of those things. And I think it's a great story, and I think it shows the grit that women can have in that kind of starting their own business. And we're not sure why there's still this bias of like, why can we not do it, or different, or just do it differently. It's not good or bad compared to a man founder. It's just differently. And so people should be a bit more open about the fact that it might not be linear, it might not be exactly this hockey stick, but there's plenty of successful businesses led by women that should get a chance to be out there. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that comment. I met a lady the other day who started a business that is coaching for women and not in the coaching of like the business aspect. It's like of life. Like there's to your point, is the mom, the
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like there's this whole connectivity aspect of it that needs to run. She's finding a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this is like eye opening. We didn't even think about these roles, and being a mom and being a wife and being a whatever it is definitely different. No matter how the world has changed, it's different.
Yeah. And you think, just to add to that, I think, I think there is still a bias of that linear, or every founder should be having this kind of target, this is how it's supposed to be, or, and fair, there's been startups and entrepreneurs for hundreds of years, and especially this VC world has been going on for what, 70, 80 years now, and counting. And so I think there is this bias towards what founding a company should look like. But I think in this time of age, especially with AI now, and then all the different family circumstances and situation, I think people should be more open to say, hey, it's not going to be linear. It's not all going to look the same, right? Like some people are going to be slower at the beginning, accelerate towards, a bit later. Some people are going to be really quick and then plateau. You know what I mean? And so I think there has to be a bit of a change of mindset there to say, hey, not every story is going to look the same, and that's okay. it doesn't mean that those people don't deserve the same amount of support or, cheering for them. It's just different than when it was 50 years ago, or even 20
Yeah.
years ago. Do you know what I
No.
mean? So I think people are going to have to be more open to that and see those stories that are not typical stories.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And so kind of on a similar vein, and you talked about Scrappy, you talked about all these things earlier on. Advice or no, maybe advice for people that are sitting there going, "Sheesh, I think I've got this great idea, or I want to start this business." Maybe that, and then tie that to the top couple of lessons learned. So, like, look, if you or advice, so whichever one you want to kind of put it into the category of, here's my wisdom.
Here's my, yeah, the little I've gotten in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah. I think it depends which day yeah, if you had me on a bad day, I'd be like, don't do it. No, I'm kidding. But I think no matter what, do it. I think if tomorrow I have to stop, right? I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't do this anymore. It's not working, or whatever it is, right? I think there has been so much learning in the last 2 years, 2.5 years for me, that I would not have learned, or I would not have discovered if I had just stayed and said, oh, I'm just doing the same consulting job or the same, you name it, right? Like startup job or anything like that. So for me, the last, definitely since the end of 22, has been really eye opening, and learning about just myself, or even like just the part of the business that it is to start from scratch, really. So that's number one. I think number two is, depending on your circumstances, just don't think about the best way to do it. I think that's and I'm saying specifically, I've run into younger founders, or founders that still had to, make the bacon and couldn't just drop everything, and so started the thing on their side, like as almost as a hobby, right? Like, hey, it's going to be slower, but I'm going to do that nights and weekends, or every other week or something. But if you're really passionate about that idea, I think, just do it, but make sure that you're not putting your financial situation at risk, or your family, or whatever it is, right? Because then it's really stressful and you burn out really quickly, right? So I think that that's something that I would, highly, highly suggest. And if you can't go 2 feet, you have the support system to just like drop everything and go, then do that. But I think, that's the piece where I think, people don't always think about that. They're like, oh, I need to just drop everything and then spend 100% on that. And you don't. You actually don't. You really can slowly devote some time, and then eventually say, okay, it is worth me really switching and going full steam ahead, or hey, no, this was fun, but it's not going to work for me. So I think that's the second piece. I think the last is, and it's funny, I'm kind of rebuilding the entourage right now, but it's and I'm really not good at asking for help. That's one thing I've learned in the last 2 3 years, is really who you surround yourself with, right? I mean, it is a difficult journey. So whether your support system, or even the people like advisors, supporters, first clients, whatever, it, right? I think, you need that support system. You need the right people. And that's actually, to me, that's the most difficult part somehow, even though, you're like, oh, you have such a great network and, all these people. And that's fair. One, I'm still not good at asking for help, so that's my fault. But two is also, just finding the right people, right? And so that's something I think, that's the last piece of wisdom, is like surround yourself with your peeps, right? Like the right peeps, to actually help you out. So
Yeah, and it's funny you said the "don't do it" thing, because I don't know what the percentage is, but there is a. I think it's a little slanted towards slightly less. When I asked everybody that question, is like, "What was your advice?" They're like, "Don't do it." About 30% said, "Don't do it." The other one that I got, and this is just a general comment for people, is if somebody told me early on, and it tends to be true. It's like, wherever whatever you think your first dollar is going to come in, like double that, because it's going to take time. It's like things happen. And then, that the other one is, again, is what you said, was surround yourself by the right people, listen and take advice, and it's your choice to act on the advice. But people have got good ideas and people want to help. It, there's no harm in listening. So thinking about you working, up until you started this, and the things you've done. So maybe as you run your life and you run your business, what have you learned in the past from a leadership perspective? So, like, whether, let's be positive, a great boss who taught you this is how to do it. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, I've had the boss that did these things, and I was adamant I was not going to do that, right? So
Had those.
yeah,
We all have both sides. To me, I spent 10 years in consulting, so all we sold was people and expertise, right? We didn't have a product per se. It's changing now, and yes, you had some accelerators and templates, but at the end of the day, you were selling people, like me, like expertise and all that stuff. And so your products were your people, and I had a really good coach for a certain amount of time at PwC that really taught me the value of how to coach people and mentor people and really treat people well. And so that was something that I really took with me after I left consulting. To say, hey, yes, now here we have a product, but you're still working with people. And so that's always been something that I really, really took with me, and as a leader, and trying to really make the time, always make the time for my team or other people needing guidance or coaching or anything like that. So that's number one. I think, I've also learned, not just out of consulting or the other jobs or other bosses that I've had, but as you're in a product, any company, to be honest, and you're in leadership, I think sometimes people forget it's a team sport, even at that level. And so, I was always the one that spent really time, and I've seen that from a couple of the leaders that I've had, right? Like spending time, and you come in and talking to all your peers, understanding, what's going on for them, where can you help them, and even though it's not your, it's not your responsibility, it's not your preview, right? But at the end of the day, we all win together. Like there is no there is no company with only one function that does great and everybody else is struggling. You know what I mean? So it's just, and I think that's what I've always looked for. For is other leaders, to work with other leaders that understood that sometimes you have to compromise on your side to help the other side, because then it lifts all of us up. And I think sometimes it's forgotten, because it's, I don't know why, but so that's really the two pieces I've learned. I think, I mean, you asked me like if there's something I've learned, and I was like, no, I don't want, I'll never do this. For me, it was I've met leaders that you had to go through the EA to make an appointment, open door policies and all that, and I always thought this was silly. I thought as a leader, you have to have the courage to leave your door open and get people to give you feedback. You also, so for me, some of those leaders like that, I was always like, yeah, that will not be, if I ever make it there, at that level. I want an open door policy. I want people to be comfortable to be able to challenge me. I'm not always going to agree with it, don't get me wrong, but that's the kind of things that I thought, no, as a leader, you have to be open to feedback and really just be
yeah,
open.
big time. And I actually had a boss that had a red and green and yellow light outside his office, and it was always on red. So it was like basically, don't ever knock on my door, don't come in. The other thing for me is what I've found is, and in leadership and doing this, is what's really important is when you say the people in the team is really caring and understanding about this. Like, hey, somebody's having a baby, or life events. It's really important for you to understand that and acknowledge, hey, how's the kids? How's the high school thing? Where are little things? It goes such a long way for people to be massively invested in that you actually do care, and you're not just sitting there and saying, hey, come to work and work 10 hours a day and take your paycheck and be happy about it. And then one other thing, and I'll get your perspective if there is any comment on it. I had a boss who I at the time didn't understand it, but I use it to this day. Was he said to me, "How do you like to be managed?" He goes, "There's some people that want to be called once a day in the morning and say, hey, go have a wonderful day, and check in at the end of the day and say, did you have a wonderful day?" Or others say, just leave me alone and I'll call you when I need you. And he was really good about when I called him, he'd say, do I need to give you advice, or do I just need to listen? And I thought that was such a profound like set of guidelines to work by that I use it today, and it's incredible how many people like really respond to that.
Yeah, no, it's actually um, an interesting way to do things. To be honest, I've never had a boss exactly like that. Just to be fair, but I can see how really empowering it is for the team, just to be able to say, hey, this is actually my work style, and this is where I need your support. So I think that's a really great. I'm going to try it.
There you go.
I
Yeah,
guess
well,
in the
I'm
future,
curious.
why not?
I'd love to hear
Um,
the feedback.
yeah, I think that's a great. Yeah.
So, as we get to the end of this, I've phenomenal conversation. Tell everybody again, name of the company, where to find you, if it's on LinkedIn, anything to promote. Do your
Yeah,
little.
yeah. Well, I mean, we this CEO is live. I mean, obviously, our wedge is fundraising operations. So, if any founders is thinking about fundraising or currently fundraising, and if you need help around that, and you need a platform to do manage your fundraising pipeline, outreach, data room, you name it, and you want to save a few bucks from DocSend and all that, please look us up, boxy.io, boxsy.io, and then if you need any help, always open for a conversation. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. And I'm starting to be a bit creative here, and I think I'm gonna provide a couple of services packages with Boxy in terms of just like I've just been help. I've been lucky to be able to help a bunch of founders from a fundraising and connection and all that. So I'm going to put myself out there a bit and do some kind of fun stuff to help founders, all related about what I'm building, but just be like, hey, a lot of founders that we've talked to don't always have the time to even use Boxy. So we were like, hey, maybe we should put a bit of my time in there and just say, hey, let's help you set you up for for the right path. So stay tuned. Some stuff are coming.
That's exciting. Well, I appreciate the time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I like your energy, and I think this will be people are going to really gravitate towards this. So, again, thanks so much.
No, thanks for having me.